Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Matt here, and this weekend I hope you get tuned into my YouTube channel where both Jeannie and I are going to be posting some more thoughts on basic entertainment where we talk about the topic of serious issues. And then Jeannie is going to talk about where we're going to be going from this point forward. But in today's video, I would like to mention a point that is an example of what both Jeannie and I do to honor a favorite celebrity when he or she passes away. And one of the things that we do is we just watch the television or a movie that the character or person who plays it is based off of. So, therefore, one of them I mentioned that passed away in August was the legendary game show host Bob Barker, who was known for a long time as the host of Price is Right, which after over 50 years, it's still on at this time slot on CBS television for people to enjoy all across the United States. Now, I want to go back to one particular date on the time zone of that, and the date is September 19th, 1983, which is a couple months before my birth, actually. And on that day, not only do I have a mention of that episode of Price is Right, but I also have in honor of a couple other game show hosts that were a couple of premieres of a couple other game shows that happened on that same day. Now, first of all, with The Price is Right, if you were watching that back then, before my time, you might have remembered the legendary game show announcer Johnny Olson, who perfected the term "come on down." But on this episode here, which took place on September 19th, we had some contestants who, even back then, had some writings or representations of the states or colleges that they were in at the time. So, one person who was from representing New Mexico State in Albuquerque was wearing a shirt called Johnny Olson to Calm Me Down. And the first game she ended up playing on the show, which was the first game of the show, was a retired game called the Super Ball. And the way you play that game is you have a skee ball thing, just like you would see in your arcade, but you have to earn the balls and by pricing some mini items and guessing a 50-50 of one of possible two prices. And if you do get it correct, then you earn a ball. Now, ball number one represented the prize behind door number one. And then ball number two ends up being the one represented for ball door number two. And finally, ball number three was the prize for door number three. Now, one of the prizes that they had on that day was an African safari, which for many people, especially those retirees, would be an ultimate getaway of a lifetime. And then after all is done, any mistakes made and trips or prizes not earned, they can earn it all by getting a Super Ball and trying to earn it the same way, like they did the other balls. And getting the Super Ball, I mean, if you win that, then you get all three prizes. So the skee ball machine actually had three holes instead of the traditional five or seven that we see today. One hole had a $50 square circle, another had $100, and then the one in the center had the big win circle, and that was where the contestant would win the prize. So this contestant ended up having just $200. But we don't see Super Bowl on Price is Right these days because some of the audience members agreed that that took too long to play, and sometimes that caused a little bit of impatience, especially when they were waiting for other segments and other pricing games to be played. Now, also, we have in this section three strikes. Now, the three strikes game on The Price is Right has been around for quite a while, like 1976. But for a long time before this episode happened, there were just 4 digits being played for the cars. Now, the object of that game, you have chips that are inside a bag that you have to pull out. And then they represent the numbers that are the price of the car. But also in the bag are also chips with the X's, which are the 3 strikes, which you want to avoid. And anytime you get a strike, it's just like in baseball. It's like 1, 2, and then 3 strikes, you're out. But in this case, it was the first time a contestant who was actually a red hat from Arlington, Texas. And by the way, the Texas Rangers this year did win the World Series. They won against Arizona a week and a half ago. So she played this for 5 digits. And for a time during that decade, 93 to 93, the 3 strikes game was played for both 4 and 5 digits cars. And if you had a 5th digit in there, they would add a plus. So, understandably, we still had cars offering the 4 and 5 digits. So, this contestant didn't end up winning, unfortunately. But at the end of the show, we actually had a girl who was representing Michigan who was a nurse named Christy. And she ended up playing the Grand Game, which is a popular game on The Price is Right, because you have 6 grocery items, and you have to pick 4 of them that are under the target price in order to move up and win the money. But if you pick one of the 2 that is over the price, then the game is over. So this contestant ended up on her 3rd pick, picking the high priced item, but getting $100. If you were to get to $1,000, then it's either you keep it or you risk it to try to win the 10,000. Because if you don't get that final one, when you go for the big money, you lose everything. And finally, it was both the Christy and Therese who made it to the showcase on this episode. And Therese ends up the big winner, and has a nice showcase with a bedroom and a camper, and ends up with $10,268 in merchandise for a 1 day total. So episodes like this, like I mentioned, now are on the Bob Barker Era channel on both Pluto TV and Roku. So you can go back and revisit them. And you can even see pricing games that today's Price is Right doesn't even have. It's all because the staff thought it was not the appropriate time to play them, or the contestants were just confused themselves. But September 19th of 1983 also had the premiere of this very popular game show with the Whammies called Press Your Luck, hosted by the late Peter Tomarken. In the first episode, we have Lana Jones, Linda Epstein, and Phil Thompson. And what's hilarious about this debut episode is the first question round. Now, in the question round, in order to earn spins, you have to try to buzz in and give the correct answer. You get your answer, and then the host reads that answer in 2 possible answers. And for a multiple choice, if the multiple choice is correct, you get 1 spin. But if you buzz in and correctly, you get 3 spins. But here's a question for you. What famous film star was also a ranked volleyball player? Now, Linda buzzes in the first question, and she guesses Bruce Jenner, who later became known as Caitlyn Jenner. Now, is the correct answer Bruce Jenner, Tom Selleck, or Sylvester Stallone? Lana and Phil come up with the answer Tom Selleck. And that obviously is the correct answer, and they both get a spin. But here's what's so hilarious about that first question round. The third question ends up being, you buy a highly attractive, expensive car. But what model do you actually buy that is most likely to get stolen? And when Lana buzzes in, she gets a Chevrolet, but that's a make. They have to look for a model. And then after shaking, she says Mercedes. Oh, it's kind of a dumb answer, but when you have some jitters on opening day, sometimes that's what you expect. It's not Mercedes, it's a Corvette. So, also, the last question was, what symbol does the ampersand represent? And the answer is the three-letter word AND, and. Most everybody would know that, but Lana unfortunately says the. So as a result, she only gets one spin to play in the first round. And Phil gets two buzz-ins correctly and ends up with 8. And at the very end of the episode, Phil is obviously the first one to hit the whammies and even get 4 whammies to whammy out of the game. Linda, in 2 of her 3 spins, hits the big bucks 5,000 in a spin to be the first contestant to do that. And she ends up winning the game with a total of $14,954. And she's obviously the defending champion and returns for the next show. That's something that would never happen on Price is Right, especially in those days, because once you're a contestant, you're ineligible. But there is a couple exceptions these days now. You just have to watch to see it to believe it. And Peter Tomarken himself, he was part of the reason who made Press Your Luck the hit it was. And unfortunately, back when I was in my senior year in college, I heard it that one day about that dreadful plane crash he had that ended his life. So we pay dividends to him, and he's another one of those legendary game show hosts that we do honor every time we watch that classic show. But with today's version with Elizabeth Banks, with more bucks and the bonus round at stake, it's obviously fun to watch again. And finally, I would like to mention that September 19th, 1983, on that Monday, saw the birth of one of the popular game shows that was on NBC Daytime, which actually had a first episode that went into the long running syndicated time slot that we all know today, even after 40 plus years. And this season is going to be Pat Sajak's final season hosting it. So he had been doing the show for a couple of years on daytime, but on September 19th, 1983, the first episode of Wheel of Fortune in syndication went on the air. Not every market at that time picked it up at first, so it was off to a little bit of a slow start. But near the end of the season, by 1984, Wheel of Fortune would become the #1 syndicated game show in America. But that first episode is very nice to see because it has 3 eager contestants. The very first puzzle played on the show was Burt Lancaster. And when we started off the show, the first round was just like the first round in daytime with a top value of $750. But the difference was the second round added a bonus wheel prize in addition to the $1,000 space. And on the daytime version, the third round top dollar value was $2,000. Whereas on the syndicated version, since then it's been $5,000. So the first winner on that show actually won the round and ended up solving the bonus puzzle. Seafood Restaurant ended up with $15,406 in merchandise. I was doing the calculation on all 3 of those game shows, compared back then to the inflation of what it is now. And when I got these numbers, if you take these 3 contestants and put it all together, they would have won a total of $40,628. I divided that by 3, and that's an average of $13,542.66 for 1983. Now, on today's inflation standards, that equals about $41,850.22. So it just goes to show what 40 years difference makes in that period of time. But like I said, we still have these 3 game shows today. And today's Wheel of Fortune, since the late 1980s, they've been playing for cash. Price is Right, of course, had 35 years, Bob Barker from 1972 to 2007. And we got Drew Carey nowadays. And this season, we even have a new studio, the Haven Studios, which were departed from the old CBS Television City, where they renamed the Bob Barker Studio in honor of his 5,000th episode in 1998. And press your luck, like I said, whenever we come out with new season episodes with Elizabeth Banks, look for that on your TV schedule on ABC prime time. So that's all I had to say. And again, we honor those hosts since they're passing away. And watch me and Janine on the next video coming up in the near future. Thank you very much and have a good weekend in honor of this Veterans Day.